My daughter said Christmas was just for close family, so I took back the vacation home. The morning I signed the deed over to myself, I sat in my Atlanta kitchen, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. My hands were shaking. Not from age, though at 63 I'd earned a few trembles, but from the weight of what I'd just discovered about my own daughter. Let me back up. My name is Lila, and for 38 years, I wore scrubs to work every single day. Pediatric nursing isn't glamorous. You deal with scared kids, worried parents, and insurance companies that treat children like claim numbers. But every paycheck, I'd take 20% and put it in a savings account labeled Family Dreams. While other nurses bought new cars or took vacations to Vegas, I ate peanut butter sandwiches and drove my Honda until the odometer hit 300,000 miles. The beachside home in Tybee Island wasn't just a house. It was my life's work wrapped in weathered shingles and salt air. 3 bedrooms, wraparound porch, and a view of the Atlantic that made your heart stop every single sunrise. I'd bought it 2 years ago when I retired, thinking it would be where my daughter Ivy would bring her kids every summer, where they'd learn to catch crabs and build sandcastles and remember what it felt like to be part of something bigger than themselves. Ivy was 34 now, married to Mark, a finance guy who wore ties that cost more than my grocery budget, and they had 2 beautiful children. Emma, 8, with Ivy's stubborn chin and my late husband's gentle eyes. And Michael, 5, who still believed in magic and asked me every phone call if I'd seen any dolphins from my porch. This past October, when the leaves in Atlanta started turning gold, I made Ivy an offer that I thought would make her year. "Honey," I'd said during our Sunday phone call, "how about you take the beach house for Christmas this year? The whole week. I'll stay here in Atlanta, give you and Mark and the kids some space to make your own traditions." The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then Ivy's voice came back, careful and measured in that way she'd perfected since marrying into Mark's world. "That's really generous, Mom. Let me talk to Mark about it." But when she called back the next day, her voice carried that bright, artificial enthusiasm that meant she was managing me like one of Mark's difficult clients. "We'd love to take you up on that offer, Mom. It'll be perfect, just the 4 of us. You know how the kids get overwhelmed with too much chaos." Too much chaos. That's what she called family now. I should have heard the warning bells then. Should have noticed how she didn't invite my sister Dee, who'd been asking about Christmas plans for weeks. Should have wondered why she seemed so eager to have me stay away. But I was so happy thinking about my grandchildren playing on that beach, about Ivy finally relaxing without feeling like she had to perform for anyone, that I missed all the red flags waving right in front of me. "Of course, baby," I'd said. "It's your vacation. Do whatever makes you happy." I spent the next 2 months planning their perfect Christmas from afar. I had the house deep cleaned, stocked the pantry with all the kids' favorite snacks, even ordered special ornaments with their names on them to be delivered the week they arrived. I called the local grocery store and arranged for fresh flowers to be waiting in every room. I wanted everything to be perfect. The week before Christmas, I was practically bouncing with excitement. I kept checking the weather forecast for Tybee Island, sunny and 70 degrees, perfect beach weather. I imagined Emma collecting shells while Michael chased sandpipers along the shore. I pictured Ivy finally letting her guard down, maybe even calling me to share stories about the kids' adventures. I had trusted her completely. That was my first mistake. You see, when you love someone the way I loved Ivy, with that fierce, protective love that starts the moment they're placed in your arms and never diminishes, not even when they grow up and start looking at you like you're an embarrassment, you want to believe the best about them. You want to think that all those years of sacrifice, all those times you chose their needs over your own wants, created something beautiful and lasting. I had worked double shifts to pay for Ivy's college, sold my grandmother's wedding ring to cover the down payment on her first apartment. When she got pregnant with Emma, I was the one who showed up at the hospital with homemade soup and stayed up all night rocking the baby so she could sleep. When Mark got laid off 3 years ago, I quietly paid their mortgage for 6 months, never mentioning it because I knew it would hurt his pride. Everything I had done, every sacrifice I had made, was an investment in this moment, in having a family that would gather together, that would remember where they came from, that would pass down stories and traditions to the next generation. The beach house was supposed to be the crown jewel of that legacy. Not just a place to vacation, but a home base where scattered family members could reconnect, where my grandchildren would form memories that would last their entire lives. I had dreamed of Christmas mornings on that porch, of Thanksgiving dinners where the whole family crowded around my grandmother's old dining table that I'd had shipped down from Atlanta. But most of all, I had trusted Ivy to understand what that house represented. I thought she knew that when I handed her those keys, I wasn't just giving her a vacation rental. I was giving her the deed to our family's future. That trust, as it turned out, was worth exactly $800 a night. And close family, as I was about to learn, didn't include me. It was Tuesday morning, December 19th, when my world tilted sideways. I was sitting at my kitchen table, going through my Christmas cards one more time before mailing them, when my phone buzzed with a text from my friend Tony. Tony Washington had been my charge nurse for 15 years, and she had a radar for trouble that could spot a problem from 3 counties away. Her message was just 2 words. "Girl, this your house?" The screenshot that followed made my coffee cup slip from my fingers, sending lukewarm liquid splashing across my grandmother's old tablecloth. There it was, my house. My porch. My exact Christmas wreath hanging on the front door, the one with the red velvet bow that I'd special ordered from a shop in Savannah. The photo was professional quality, taken from the perfect angle to showcase the wraparound porch and that $1 million ocean view that had taken 38 years of my life to afford. But it wasn't the image that made my heart stop, it was the text underneath. Exclusive Tybee Island retreat, $800 per night, 5-night minimum. Perfect private getaway for intimate holidays. Stunning beachfront property with unobstructed ocean views. Recently renovated with luxury amenities. Ideal for couples or small families seeking an upscale experience away from crowded resorts. No noisy neighbors, no family drama, just pure relaxation and privacy. The listing was posted under the name MNI Coastal Properties. There were 12 professional photographs, including close-ups of my grandmother's quilts on the beds, the antique rocking chair I'd refinished myself, and the kitchen where I'd spent countless hours teaching Ivy how to make her great-grandmother's biscuit recipe. The description went on to detail amenities I'd never advertised because I'd never thought of my home as a business. Fully stocked gourmet kitchen, premium linens, private beach access, complimentary wine selection, and concierge services available upon request. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely scroll through the photos. There was my living room, staged like a magazine spread. The family photos had been removed from the mantel, replaced with generic coastal artwork. The bookshelf where I kept photo albums spanning 3 generations had been cleared out, filled instead with expensive-looking coffee table books about architecture and wine. They had erased us. Literally erased every trace of our family from the house to make it more appealing to strangers. The booking calendar showed solid red blocks, reserved, from December 20th through January 3rd, Christmas week. New Year's week. The exact dates Ivy had claimed for their intimate family vacation. My phone was already dialing before my brain caught up to what I was doing. Hello. Ivy's voice was crisp, professional. In the background, I could hear the familiar sounds of her suburban life, the dishwasher running, kids arguing over a toy. Ivy Margaret Patterson. I only used her full name when she was in serious trouble. What in God's name is this? The silence stretched long enough for me to hear Emma complaining about Michael stealing her crayons. What's what, Mom? But her voice had changed. Gotten careful. My house, baby girl. My house is listed on Airbnb for $800 a night, with pictures of my Christmas decorations and my grandmother's quilts. Another pause. When she spoke again, her tone was the same one she used for difficult conference calls at her marketing job, detached, slightly condescending. It's not like we're renting it to strangers, Mom. We're just keeping things manageable, making it available to select guests who appreciate what the property has to offer. Select guests. My voice cracked. Ivy, you told me you wanted it for family Christmas. You said. And we do want it for family Christmas. Close family only. Just the 4 of us, like I said. Look, Mom, you offered us the house, and we're using it responsibly. Actually, we're treating it better than a regular family vacation because we're maintaining professional standards. Close family. There it was again. That phrase that somehow managed to draw a circle around her new life while leaving the rest of us standing outside in the cold. So, where exactly do I fit in this close family category, Ivy? The question hung in the air like smoke. I could hear her breathing, could almost see her calculating her response, weighing her words like Mark weighed his investment portfolios. Mom, you know I love you, but you also know how you can be sometimes. You get overwhelmed when there are too many people around. And Mark's been under so much stress at work, and the kids have been acting out because of the holidays, and we just thought it would be better for everyone if we kept things simple this year. How I can be sometimes. As if loving my family out loud was a character defect. As if wanting to include my sister, who'd helped raise Ivy, was somehow overwhelming. As if 38 years of sacrifice had earned me the right to be managed like a difficult client instead of honored like the woman who made their comfortable life possible. Ivy, I said quietly, you can't sell something that doesn't belong to you. And you sure can't sell me short and expect to keep the deed. The line went dead. I sat in my kitchen, staring at that Airbnb listing, and felt something shift inside my chest. Something that had been bending and accommodating and making excuses finally snapped clean in two. My daughter had chosen money over family. Had chosen the approval of strangers over the love of the woman who raised her. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd forgotten that the house was still in my name. After Ivy hung up on me, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, watching the December sun slant through my windows and trying to pinpoint exactly when my daughter had started treating our family like a liability instead of a legacy. The truth was, this wasn't the first time Ivy had drawn that invisible line between the people she claimed and the people she'd rather forget. Ever since she married Mark 3 years ago, Mark with his country club membership and his last name that appeared on street signs in the fancy part of town, she'd been slowly, methodically pruning the family tree that raised her. It started small. Aunt Dee, my younger sister, who'd practically lived at our house when Ivy was growing up, suddenly stopped getting invited to birthday parties. Dee had been the one to teach Ivy how to French braid her hair, had been the emergency contact at school when I was working double shifts. She'd driven 4 hours from Macon every Christmas morning for 15 years straight, arms loaded with homemade peach preserves and stories that made Ivy laugh until she snorted. But last Christmas, when Dee asked about coming to Atlanta for the holidays, Ivy had said they were keeping it small this year. When Dee asked about Emma's birthday party in March, Ivy claimed they were just doing immediate family. I should have said something then. Should have asked Ivy what exactly had happened to make her ashamed of the woman who'd been like a second mother to her. But I didn't want to cause drama. I told myself Ivy was just busy, overwhelmed with her new life. Then there was cousin Terrence. Sweet Terrence, who'd been Ivy's favorite relative growing up, who used to make elaborate birthday cakes shaped like whatever she was obsessed with that year. A unicorn when she was 6, a soccer ball when she was 12, a graduation cap when she finished college. Terrence was gay, had been with his partner David for 20 years, and they ran a small catering business that had put 3 local kids through college with the scholarship fund they quietly maintained. But when Mark's parents came to visit, and Terrence and David stopped by with a housewarming gift, I watched my daughter's face freeze into a mask of polite discomfort. She introduced them as Mom's cousin and his friend David. Later, when Terrence called to invite them to his annual 4th of July barbecue, an event Ivy had never missed, she made excuses about being out of town. The pattern became clearer at Emma's school events. I'd watch Ivy in her carefully chosen outfits, her hair professionally styled, laughing at jokes from other parents whose children had trust funds and summer houses. She'd perfected this version of herself that was all smooth edges and measure responses, never too loud, never too emotional, never too anything that might suggest she came from a family that worked with their hands and shouted across the dinner table and hugged too hard. When other parents asked about family, Ivy would mention Mark's parents, his father the surgeon, his mother the art gallery owner, but somehow never found space in those conversations for the pediatric nurse who'd raised her or the aunts and cousins who'd surrounded her with love her entire life. I started noticing how she corrected Emma when my granddaughter would mention things from their old life. When Emma talked about the time Aunt Dee had taught her to play spades, Ivy would quickly redirect the conversation. When Michael mentioned the church I'd taken him to, Grandma Lila's church where they sing real loud, Ivy would wince like he'd said something embarrassing. Mark never helped. He'd smile his investment banker smile and nod politely when my family was mentioned, but I'd caught him referring to my church as quaint and my neighborhood as transitional. He'd never been rude exactly, but there was a distance in his eyes, like he was studying us from behind glass, trying to figure out how these people had produced his wife. The worst part was watching Ivy erase her own history to fit into his world. She'd stopped mentioning where she went to high school, a perfectly good public school, but not fancy enough for Mark's social circle. She'd started lying about little things, like where she learned to cook, claiming she'd taken classes instead of admitting her grandmother had taught her in a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people. I'd watched her teach Emma to play tennis instead of basketball, despite the fact that Ivy had been a star point guard who'd earned a partial scholarship. I'd seen her sign the kids up for sailing lessons instead of swimming, even though Ivy had learned to swim in the public pool where I'd taken her every summer of her childhood. She was rewriting herself, and in doing so, she was rewriting all of us, making us smaller, more manageable, easier to explain away. But this business with the house wasn't just about social climbing or fitting in. This was about money, about turning the physical symbol of our family's love and sacrifice into a commodity for strangers who could afford $800 a night. She'd taken the place where I dreamed of my grandchildren learning our family stories and turned it into a stage set for other people's vacations. She'd removed our photographs, our memories, our very presence from the space I'd intended as our forever gathering place. And she'd done it all while looking me in the eye and talking about close family and keeping things manageable. The house wasn't just about the house. It was about what and who she was trying to erase. And I was apparently at the top of that list. By Wednesday morning, I'd made up my mind. I sat at my computer with a cup of coffee that was actually hot this time, pulled up the property management website, and logged into the account I'd created when I first bought the house. My fingers moved across the keyboard with the steady precision I'd learned from 38 years of charting patient medications. Deliberate, careful, irreversible. First, I canceled every single booking. December 20th through January 15th gone. The system asked if I was sure, warned me about cancellation fees and potential penalties to my host rating. I clicked confirm on every single warning box. Then I removed the listing entirely, deleted every professional photograph of my grandmother's quilts and my hand-refinished furniture, erased every trace of MNI Coastal Properties from the platform. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I picked up my phone and started making calls to real family, the kind Ivy had been systematically cutting out of our lives. Aunt Dee. My sister's voice was sleepy. I'd woken her up, but I didn't care. You still free Christmas week? Lila? Girl, what time is it? Of course I'm free. You know I don't have anywhere else to be since Ivy stopped. She caught herself, but we both knew what she'd been about to say. Pack your bags. We're going to the beach. And bring your peach preserves. Next call, Cousin Terrence. He answered on the first ring, probably because he was already up prepping for his morning catering orders. Lila, honey, what's got you calling so early? Terrence, you and David ever been to Tybee Island? Can't say that we have. Why? Well, you're about to. Can you get away Christmas week? I've got a house with a view that'll make you weep, and I need someone who knows how to make a proper Christmas dinner for a crowd. I could hear the smile in his voice. How big a crowd we talking about? The real family. All of it. My next call was to Elise, my goddaughter in Savannah. Elise was 28, working as a teacher, and one of the few people who could make me laugh until my sides hurt. She was also someone Ivy had started treating like a distant acquaintance instead of the girl I'd helped raise when her parents died in a car accident. Aunt Lila, this is a surprise. Don't tell me you're finally ready to let me teach you how to use Instagram. Better. How'd you like to spend Christmas week at the beach? And bring anyone you want, boyfriend, friends, that whole crew of teachers you're always talking about. We're having a real family Christmas. Are you serious? Your house? The one Ivy's been hoarding like, she stopped herself. Yes, that house. And nobody's hoarding anything anymore. By noon, I'd filled every bedroom and made arrangements for air mattresses and sleeping bags. Dee was driving down from Macon with her famous cornbread dressing. Terrence and David were planning a Christmas Eve seafood feast. Cousin Marcus from Jacksonville was bringing his guitar and his 3 teenagers. My friend Tony from work was coming with her husband and their twin boys. Even old Mrs. Henderson from next door in Atlanta was making the trip. I'd arranged for her grandson to drive her down. The house was going to be full of laughter and music and people who knew every embarrassing story about each other. People who would argue over dominoes and fall asleep in chairs watching old movies and wake up Christmas morning to the sound of children running downstairs that creaked in all the right places. It was going to be everything Ivy had spent 3 years trying to avoid. My phone rang at 2:47 p.m. Ivy's name flashed on the screen, and I let it ring 3 times before answering.
Mom.
Her voice was tight with barely controlled fury. What did you do? I took my house back, baby girl. You can't just cancel people's reservations. Do you have any idea how much money? Oh, I know exactly. How much money? $800 a night times 14 nights. That's $11,200 you were planning to make off my generosity. Did you think I was too old to do math? That's not. We weren't keeping all of that. There are fees and cleaning costs and you were going to cut me out of my own house while you played hostess to strangers for profit. The silence stretched long enough for me to hear Mark in the background, his voice urgent and muffled. Then Ivy was back, and her tone had shifted to the pleading voice she'd used as a child when she'd been caught in a lie. Mom, please. We have commitments. People have already paid deposits. Mark's parents are expecting to stay there, and Mark's parents. This was new information. I thought this was just for the 4 of you. Intimate family time. Wasn't that what you said? Another pause. More muffled conversation. We invited them later.
After we talked to you.
They're flying in from Boston, and if we don't have the house, then I guess you'll have to figure something else out. Maybe one of those nice hotels where they understand that family means the people who actually show up when it matters. Mom, you're being unreasonable. We can work this out. We can invite Aunt Dee for 1 day, if that's what this is about. 1 day. Like my sister was an obligation to be managed rather than a person to be celebrated. Ivy, baby, this isn't about Aunt Dee, though she deserves better than your charity invitations. This isn't even about the money, though what you did was theft, plain and simple. I took a breath, thinking of all the years I'd bitten my tongue, all the times I'd watched her choose Mark's approval over our family's feelings. This is about the fact that you looked at 38 years of my love and sacrifice and decided it was worth $800 a night to strangers, but not worth including the woman who made it all possible. She didn't respond.
Couldn't respond, maybe.
The house is full, Ivy. Full of people who remember where they came from and aren't ashamed to say so. You're welcome to join us, but you come as family, not as management. I hung up before she could answer. Before she could try to negotiate or manipulate or explain away what couldn't be explained. My house was going to be full of real family for Christmas. And for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't going to apologize for that. We arrived at the beach house on December 23rd like a caravan of joy and chaos. Aunt Dee's car was loaded with so many covered dishes, I thought her suspension might give out. Terrence and David pulled up in their catering van, already arguing good-naturedly about whether the shrimp should be boiled or grilled. Elise came with 3 teacher friends, their car decorated with tinsel and playing Christmas music so loud Mrs. Henderson could probably hear it from 2 states away. By evening, the house was exactly what I dreamed it would be, alive. Every room buzzed with conversation and laughter. Cousin Marcus had claimed the front porch with his guitar, serenading the ocean with a mix of Christmas carols and old R&B that had everyone singing along. The kids, ranging from Tony's 8-year-old twins to Marcus's teenagers, had formed an unlikely pack that raced between the beach and the house, sandy and sunburned and absolutely electric with freedom. I stood in the kitchen, Watching Terrence teach Elise's friend Sarah how to properly season a turkey while Dee and David debated the merits of different cornbread recipes. This was what family sounded like: overlapping voices, gentle arguments about food, laughter that started in one room and rippled through the whole house. But I had one more thing to do. I pulled out the old photo album from my bedroom closet, the one Ivy hadn't touched in years, the one that had been noticeably absent from the professional Airbnb photos. Its worn leather cover was soft from decades of handling, filled with pictures that told the real story of our family. I carried it to the living room, where the younger crowd had gathered around the fireplace. "Y'all want to see something special?" I opened to the first page. Ivy at 3 years old, riding piggyback on Auntie's shoulders at a family barbecue. Ivy's gap-toothed grin was huge, her little hands tangled in Dee's hair. Dee looked exhausted. She'd been working double shifts at the textile plant, but her smile was radiant. "Lord, look at that baby," Dee said softly, settling beside me on the couch. "She used to make me carry her everywhere. Said walking was for people who didn't have Aunt Dee." I turned the page. Ivy at 7, covered in flour, standing on a kitchen chair next to Terrence. They were both laughing at something off camera, probably at the disaster that was their first attempt at making a birthday cake together. "That's the year she insisted she wanted a dinosaur cake," Terrence chuckled. "Took us 4 tries to get it right, and it still looked more like a green blob than a T-Rex. But she loved it." More pages. Ivy at 12, teaching Marcus's oldest boy how to fish from this very porch. Ivy at 16, slow dancing with her grandfather at my birthday party. Ivy at 18, crying happy tears at her high school graduation while our entire extended family cheered from the bleachers. All of us wearing matching t-shirts that said, "Ivy's Army," that Elise had made at the mall. "She was so embarrassed by those shirts," I said, running my finger over the photo. "But she kept hers. I found it in her bedroom closet when she moved out." The room had grown quiet. Everyone gathered around the album now. Even the teenagers had put down their phones, drawn in by these glimpses of a version of Ivy they'd never seen or had forgotten. I turned to one of my favorite pictures. Ivy at 25, the day she got her first real job. She was wearing a dress I'd bought her, standing in front of the small marketing firm where she'd started as an assistant. But what made the photo special was the background. Our entire family had shown up to take her to lunch on her first day. Aunt Dee had driven 4 hours just to be there. Terrence had closed his catering business for the afternoon. Even my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, had insisted on coming along. "We were so proud," I said quietly. "All of us." She was the first person in our family to work in an office, to wear a suit to work every day. We thought she was going to change the world. "She still could," Elise said softly. "People change, Aunt Lila. Sometimes they just lose their way for a while." I was about to respond when I heard car doors slamming outside. Through the window, I could see a familiar SUV in the driveway. Ivy's car, with Mark's BMW right behind it. My heart jumped into my throat. After 3 days of perfect family time, after finally feeling like my house was home again, she was here. But as I watched through the window, I realized she wasn't storming toward the door like I'd expected. She was standing by her car, staring at the house. The porch lights illuminated her face, and even from a distance, I could see the conflict written there. Behind her, Mark was gesturing impatiently, but she wasn't moving. Then I saw why she was frozen. Emma and Michael had gotten out of the car and were standing beside her, and Emma was holding something in her hands, something that looked suspiciously like the photo album I'd given her last Christmas, the smaller version filled with pictures of just her and Michael's adventures with their extended family. Through the open windows, the sound of our celebration drifted out. Marcus playing guitar, voices harmonizing on Silent Night, children laughing, the unmistakable sound of a family that loved each other loudly and without reservation. Emma tugged on Ivy's hand and said something I couldn't hear, but I could see my granddaughter pointing toward the house, toward the light and music and warmth that we'd created together. For a moment, just a moment, I saw the little girl in Ivy's face, the one who used to ride on Aunt Dee's shoulders, who learned to cook in Terrence's kitchen, who cried happy tears when her whole family showed up to celebrate her victories. Then Mark said something sharp, and the moment shattered. Ivy's face closed off, became that careful mask she'd perfected. She took Emma's hand and started walking toward the door. But Emma was still clutching that photo album. And as they got closer, I could hear her excited voice. "Mommy, look. It's just like the pictures. Everyone's here. Everyone's here." Out of the mouths of babes. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and walked to the front door. It was time to see if my daughter remembered who she used to be, or if she'd choose to walk away from us one more time. I opened the door before Ivy could knock. She stood there in her perfectly coordinated Christmas outfit, red cashmere sweater, designer jeans, boots that probably cost more than most people's rent. Behind her, Mark looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth, checking his phone with aggressive disinterest. But it was Emma and Michael who broke my heart and put it back together at the same time. They launched themselves at me like I was the best present under any Christmas tree. "Grandma Lila." Emma's voice was pure joy. "We came for the party. I brought the picture book you gave me." Over their heads, I met Ivy's eyes. She looked exhausted, like she'd been wrestling with herself for days and wasn't sure who had won. "Mom," she said quietly, "we need to talk." "We're talking," I said, not moving from the doorway. "You want to come in and meet your family? They've been asking about you." Mark stepped forward, his jaw tight. "Lila, this has gone far enough. You cost us thousands of dollars in cancellation fees, not to mention the damage to our reputation." "Your reputation?" Aunt Dee's voice came from behind me, sharp as a blade. She'd appeared in the hallway, drawn by the sound of voices. "Boy, what reputation? The one where you make money off other people's generosity." More family members had started gathering, Terrence wiping his hands on a kitchen towel, Elise and her friends curious about the drama, Marcus still holding his guitar. The house had gone quiet except for the sound of waves against the shore. Ivy looked at all of them, these people who'd loved her, celebrated her, invested in her dreams, and I saw something crack in her carefully constructed armor. "Ivy, honey," Terrence said gently, "we saved you some of that cornbread you used to love. The kind your great-grandmother taught me to make." "And I brought those peach preserves," Dee added. "Been making them the same way for 30 years, just like you remember." Emma tugged on her mother's hand. "Mommy, can we stay? Please? I want to show everybody my pictures." But Mark was shaking his head, pulling out his phone. "This is ridiculous. We have other arrangements to make. The hotel situation in Savannah is completely booked because of your mother's stunt, and my parents are flying in tomorrow expecting." "Mark." Ivy's voice was quiet but firm. "Stop." He looked up from his phone, surprised. "Just stop. For 1 minute." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw my little girl again, the one who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, the one who made me macaroni necklaces for Mother's Day, the one who wrote thank you notes to Santa because she was worried he didn't get enough appreciation. "Mom, I need to tell you something. About the house. About all of this." I stepped aside, finally letting them in. The family dispersed back to their conversations, giving us space but staying close enough to provide support if needed. Ivy sat on the couch where we'd been looking at photo albums, Emma and Michael immediately flanking her like bodyguards. Mark remained standing, radiating disapproval. "The Airbnb thing," she began, then stopped, running her hands through her hair. "It wasn't just the house, Mom. I've been running a whole business. Short-term rentals. I started with our spare room when Mark was laid off, then I expanded. I have 18 properties now all over Georgia and South Carolina." I felt my eyebrows rise. 18 properties? Some I rent legitimately from the owners. Some I. She glanced at Mark, who was glaring at her like she was confessing to crime. Some I list without permission. Houses that are sitting empty, vacation homes whose owners only use them a few weeks a year. I've been making good money, Mom. Really good money. The room felt like all the air had been sucked out of it. "Ivy," I said slowly, "that's fraud." "It's entrepreneurship," Mark interjected. "It's using available resources efficiently. These properties just sit empty most of the time anyway." It's stealing, Aunt Dee said flatly. Ivy flinched. I know it is. And I know what I did with your house was worse because it was yours. Because you trusted me. Her voice broke. Because you gave it to me out of love, and I turned it into just another business opportunity. Emma was looking back and forth between the adults, confusion written all over her face. Mommy, are you in trouble? Yeah, baby. Mommy made some really bad choices. I watched my daughter sitting there, surrounded by the family she'd been systematically excluding, finally telling the truth about the web of lies she'd built. And I realized something that surprised me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was heartbroken. Ivy, I said softly, when did you stop thinking you were enough? Just as you are? She looked up at me, tears starting to spill. I don't know. Somewhere along the way, I started feeling like everything I came from was small. Like I had to prove I belonged in Mark's world by being bigger, shinier, more successful than anyone expected. But you do belong, Elise said from across the room. You belong here, with us. You always have. I know that now, Ivy whispered. Sitting in that hotel room in Savannah, listening to Emma ask why we couldn't just stay with Grandma Lila like we used to, I remembered what it felt like to be part of something real instead of just performing all the time. She looked around the room, taking in the faces of people who'd never stopped loving her despite being pushed away. I want to make this right, Mom. All of it. I'm going to shut down the illegal listings, pay back what I owe, face whatever consequences come. And I want. She took a shaky breath. I want to come home. Not to the house. I know I don't deserve that. But to the family. If you'll have me. I didn't answer with words. I just opened my arms. And for the first time in 3 years, my daughter came home. 3 weeks later, I got a photo on my phone, Emma and Michael on the porch of the beach house, holding that old photo album, grinning at the camera. The text from Ivy was simple, teaching them where they come from. Thank you for never giving up on us. Maybe it wasn't too late after all.